Hello, welcome to Tony's Bonsai. Today I need to do some work on these spruce trees. I've got 7 spruce trees here that I collected in the spring. I wired them all when I got them home, and what's interesting is the difference between the thicker ones and the thinner ones. As you can see here, I managed to get some really quite nice movement into these trees, you know, in multiple directions. This is a really interesting sort of curving one that's now going up, and I really like this. They've come on well this year, they've grown healthily, and they've taken the shape, which is great. If I compare them to these larger trees, the difference is quite stark. These have put on a lot more growth. They've had very healthy years, they've done well, but the trunks have not really accepted much of the new movement, and they're still relatively straight. This is a really good example of how well these trees have grown this year. The major cuts that I made have almost completely healed. I've applied aluminium wire to all 4 of these trees now, so one at a time I'm going to have a go at pruning them, bending them and getting some shape back into them, just to make them a bit more interesting. The first tree, it's got some nice movement up at the top, but I don't like this inverse taper. It's quite thin here and it goes really thick around this area that I removed the branch last year, and it might improve over time, but I'm just not convinced. Therefore, what I'm thinking the solution could be is removing the trunk here, allowing this to be the new leader, or possibly this bud that comes up here, whichever grows thicker. And I've applied wire just to this bottom section to allow me just to get a bit of movement in this. So before I make the cut, I'm going to do the bend. And with this leader coming this way, the new leader, I think I will bend it back against itself, so let's go for this. There we go. That wasn't a crack, that was the turntable. They're quite flexible spruce, especially when they're fairly young like this. And what I did last year, I think I removed the wire too soon. See it bounce back up. It really bounces back up a lot. It's a very flexible wood. So I'm going to... I know people say they're hiding behind the pillows watching me doing this kind of bending. But there, that's got something interesting going on there now, I think. I want to cut this branch back nicely, right in there. Lovely. So that's a nice concave cut. Just a little bit sticking out there, which I want to remove. That's the first one done, looking good. Got some nice movement in it. This one's been really healthy this year. As you can see, it's put on lots of new growth. It's looking great. And it has held some of the shape that I put in it last year, but for me that's not enough. It's just too boring for a spruce. I like interesting spruces that look like, I don't want them to look like a Christmas tree from the garden centre. I want it to have real character. This has got a couple of branches, both coming from the same place, similar place here, and I want to keep them both, but I want them both in a position where they could be useful. So I'm thinking that if I could have this as a side branch and this as a potential new leader, if I decide to chop at a later date, that means by taking the tree in that direction, that will work. But I want to get the bend in the bottom. I've applied a double coil of wire down here, so hopefully I can get some bend in this lower section. It was quite thick, which is why I went with the 2 pieces of wire. And this is one where you've got to sort of get both hands on it and really use some force if you can. This is quite tricky because of this branch here, but I do want this on the top. Now this is quite difficult, this. That might work. There, that's getting a bit into it. There. That started going there. That's good. There we go. Whew, I don't need to bother going to the gym today. So we've got that movement in there. This branch is still good. These are all solid. But I don't want to leave it like that. With these branches sort of going across, I'm thinking this trunk here can now be brought right back round. And that's my plan. So I'm going to twist this right back. Come on. Very springy this. It's going. Not bad. That's not bad. And if I can take this up like that, now I'm getting something. That's got some interest to it. It's got potential in the future. I could cut it here. This could be a new leader, either of these. I'm not sure about keeping both of these in position actually. I think one of them might have to go, but I'll leave that for the time being. And I think the rest of it's good. I think it'll be cut off at the top, up here. This will become the new leader. But for now that works. I'm just going to try and get some more bend into the base again, right down at the bottom. There we go. That's beginning to look more like I imagined in my mind. And now I can support this here and just bring that top up like that. Like that. There we go. Now I'm getting something with a bit of character, and I can always plant it on an angle like that if necessary. You know, it doesn't have to be planted at this angle, and in fact this is a very straight planting angle, so I suspect it will end up going something like that, or even a cascade or something. But what I do know is, to me that's a more interesting tree now, and that can just be left to grow. Here we've got another nice healthy tree. It's doing well. It's got some good branches on it, this, and it has got that movement from last year where it sort of leans across, which I like. And I don't want to chop this down, but it is developing a whorl up at the top, which I want to sort out. And I want to add a little more curve at the base. So I just want to get a bit more movement into this. If you're enjoying watching this video, see me work on these trees, and you'd like to see how these progress over the years, you know what to do. Hit that subscribe button. And so I think it just wants to be bent over. Just quite simply, really. Just holding the base and just getting it more on an angle like that. I like this to be a sort of sloping tree. I think that works well, and I'm happy with that. But I do want to sort this whorl at the top out now. Like pines, spruce tend to get these points where they have multiple branches all coming from the same place, and if you're not careful you'll get inverse taper, so some of these have to be removed. I'm choosing to remove most of them, I think. All the pointing down ones go first of all, and then I'm even really thinking about removing one of the remaining two. I've tilted this tree up so that you can see underneath the trunk. I've had to cut these sections off. I've got two opposing branches in a straight section here, and what I'm thinking now is this tree is best with that completely removed, and even this here Gone. I've really cut that to a fairly thin piece because I don't want that to swell. And they heal up so well, that'll be fine. Or it won't, and I can cut back to a lower one. I prefer that now, I think it's a lot better. It is very drastic, that cut, but as I say, I'm not bothered. This could easily be a new leader here. That'd be fine if I have to cut back to that. But I needed to get rid of that big bulge and create something interesting. I think these branches will all need wiring. Probably late summer I'll apply some wire to these and try and get some movement into them. But for the time being now, I just want this to set in place and heal. This one maintained a little bit of the movement from last year, but not a lot. It's still basically straightish. You could call it, what did they call it? Something movement, gentle movement or subtle movement, that's it. It's got some whorls on it that I need to sort out. Possibly this, either that big branch there has to go or the main trunk has to go there. And I think this is the same as the last tree. You know what, I'm going to leave it on this time, the big one, and I'm going to remove this thick branch. I definitely can't have both, so one of them had to go, and this time it's the branch, just to be a bit different as well. So I want to cut it right back. And now to put some movement into the trunk. I think what I tried last year with this tree was sending it this way and then that way. So I'm going to try to reproduce that same idea, because the wood will naturally already be wanting to bend in that direction. So I'll go right over with that if I can. There we go. That's right over. And then back on itself, and you might think, oh, you're producing the classic letter S shape that's people don't tend to necessarily like and doesn't look very natural. But you see it spring back. If you don't go extreme on spruce, they don't hold. I think this could be a case for using a piece of wire to tie that down, and it could work well. I just found a piece on the floor. That's perfect. I'll just wedge it in there like that. And then probably should use the fresh piece of wire for this, but I'll make do, it'll be fine. And all I'm going to do now is try and bend this down into position. Probably pull in here through that loop there. Oh, this could work. So I've kind of got my guy wire there, and all I need to do is bend this top section down, keep pulling on that guy wire as I go down with it like that. Keep pulling, pull a bit more, and once I think I can go a little bit more dramatic, let's go right down to there, pull that tight and then twist it down and lock that in place. So that's quite extreme, I think. but it works. Wonder if I can get some bend back down here now by doing that. There we go. Quite like that. Could I bend this top section up a little bit, just the end? Just to allow the tree to grow healthily, that's all. They prefer to be pointed up. So yeah, I like that. So I'm pleased with that. It's added some character to it. Something interesting to work with in the future. And that should grow quite healthily now. Any of these cuts now require some cut paste just to seal them in for the winter. Apart from that, as always, thanks for joining me. Have a great day. I'll see you soon.